Okay, my 30 for 30 is on Knute Rockne and the 1920 Notre Dame's football. Knute Rockne was born March 4th, 1888 in Voss, Norway. He died March 34th, 1931. He was 43 years old and he died in Bazar, Kansas. His playing career, 1910 to 1913, was at Notre Dame. 1914, Akron Indians. 1915 to 1917, Massillon Tigers. His position was end. Knute Rockne's administration career, he graduated and became a chemistry instructor. Started part-time as a football coach. 1918, he became head coach of the Notre Dame football team. 1920 to 1930, he stayed at Notre Dame as a coach. He won 3 national championships, 1924, 1929, and in 1930. His overall statistics as a coach at Notre Dame were 105 victories, 12 losses, and 5 titles without a tie. 1920s Notre Dame. Their conference was independent. Their record 9-0. Offensive scheme single wing. Base defense was a 7-2-2. The captain in 1920 was Frank Coughlin. The schedule of 1920 for the Notre Dame football team was Kalamazoo, Western State, Nebraska, Valparaiso, Army, Purdue, Indiana, Northwestern, Michigan Agriculture. The legacy of Knute Rockne. Rockne made Notre Dame a feared program because of how good they were and and how they could not be beaten. In 1924, their season was untied and undefeated. Rockne is known as a great coach of his time. While Rockne was the coach at Notre Dame, the team was known as the Rambling Irish or Rockne's Warriors. 1928 season was his most disastrous season because the team was not very good. They did not know how to play football very well. They fumbled a lot. The 1929 team was the greatest of all time with Rockne. 1930, they went to Southern California to take on USC in the Rose Bowl. Notre Dame won the game 27-0 against the Trojans. The Trojans were a feared team, and everyone thought that the USC Trojans were going to absolutely beat Notre Dame. They didn't even think Notre Dame would score. This is known as Rockne's proudest moment. Rockne coached 4 players known as the Four Horsemen. They were QB Harry Stradadire, halfback Elmer Lydon, who couldn't keep away from tacklers. Right halfback Jim Crowley was known as a fumbler, and this was one of Rockne's biggest pet peeves. And left halfback Don Miller thought he was bored by the game, didn't look like he wanted to play. He also had coached John Law, Marty Brill, and Frank Corradell. Knute Rockne's death. He was flying to Hollywood when he was over Kansas. The plane crashed in Bazaar, Kansas. He was taken back and they had a memorial service for him and buried him on Notre Dame grounds. They say he was the rock of Notre Dame. One of the players that he also coached in 1919, he was the star of the team, was George Gipp. In 1919, they were untied and undefeated. When disaster struck, Gipp dies of pneumonia. Newt had to rebuild the entire team. They always say, do one for the old Gipper. And with that saying, at halftime in the Rose Bowl, they were down by a touchdown against USC. And in the locker room, Rockne gave his entire team a speech saying, we are not the team that just rolls over and dies. We are a team that fights back to the very end. And then he says, we have a saying, do one for the old Gipper. And as he said that, after halftime, the team went out, and on the very first play, they scored the tying touchdown. After that, they scored again to go ahead of the notorious USC. In the 1920 season, they were undefeated throughout the entire season against Kalamazoo, Western State, Nebraska, Valparaiso, Army, Purdue, Indiana, Northwestern, and Michigan Agriculture. He coached at Notre Dame for 13 years as a head coach. His schemes include the eponymous Notre Dame box offense that was, as I said, the 7-2-2 defense. Rockne's box included a shift. The backfield lined up in a T formation, then quickly shifted into a box to the left or right, just as the ball was snapped. Rockne was also shrewd enough to recognize that intercollegiate sports had a show business aspect. Thus, he worked hard promoting Notre Dame football to make it financially successful. He used his considerable charm to court favor from the media, which then consisted of newspapers, wire services, and radio stations and networks to obtain free advertising for Notre Dame football. He was very successful as an advertising pitchman for South Bend-based Studebaker and other products. He eventually received an annual income of $75,000 for Notre Dame, which in today's dollars is millions. Rockne took over from his predecessor, Jesse Harper, in the war-torn season of 1918, posting a 3-1-2 record, losing only one to the Michigan Aggies. He made his coaching debut on September 28, 1918, against Case Tech in Cleveland, earning a 26-6 victory. In the backfield were Leonard Bond, George Gipp, and Curly Lembu. In Gipp, Rockne had an ideal handler of the forward pass. The 1919 team had Rockne handle the line and Gus Doras handle the backfield. The team went undefeated and was a national champion through the championship. Is not recognized by Notre Dame.